Hello, my name is Hearne, and I'm very pleased to be with you here today. I'd like to thank the Denver Mile High PMI Symposium team for organizing this wonderful event and bringing the speakers together. I hope you will find this to be entertaining, educational, and informational, and something that you can take back with you to the office, to your home life, and apply to help reduce stress. The title of my presentation today is called Diamonds in the U.S. Treasury. We'll be talking about what EFTPS is. That's the name of the organization that I work with within Fiserv. I'm an employee of Fiserv Corporation. And we're going to be talking about how to get consistent delivery under pressure, establish good habits with these streamlined standards. We're going to talk about communications, and then we're going to jump into habits and creating habits of excellence. And this is what the learning outcomes will look like. We're going to talk about sources of project and program delivery pressure, methods you can leverage to handle pressures that are pushing you down, making things difficult for you and your team, how to apply these methods to professional and personal life. And then we're going to move into taking inventory of your habits. So creating a list of habits, changing habits, developing habits, making those part of your daily routine, weekly routine to minimize stress and help you improve your performance. Okay, so let's talk about this diamond in the treasury. And I just want to say, no, I'm not going to talk about the U.S. government for the next 55 minutes, so you can all take a breath of relief and sigh to yourselves in front of your computer screen, wherever you are. But I am going to talk to you about something really exciting within the federal government, and that is a program called the Electronic Federal Tax Payment System. And so, again, I'll give you another warning. Yes, this division of Fiserv actually collects taxes. It collects your taxes and your employer's taxes and any company in the entire United States. So you've been warned, there will be some tax discussion here, but I wanted to let you know it's actually a pretty fascinating and exciting area of the government and something that the government does do very well. And I know that because I get to sit on the sidelines and in the arena where it's all happening, both depending on the project and the program. So first of all, what is EFTPS? Well, it operates 24/6 in terms of staffing, and it's a service provided by the U.S. Department of Treasury that allows taxpayers to make tax payments. Now, there are a couple other components, and we won't go into all the 15 plus different channels for collecting your money or the money from your companies. But I did want to give you a little taste of the scale of what EFTPS does. In 2020, the EFTPS program collected $3 trillion and delivered this money securely to the U.S. Treasury. EFTPS is a multi-organization partnership. Depending on the project or the program, we will have up to 7 at a minimum other organizations we're partnering with, or sometimes up to 12, depends on the project. This is administered by Fiserv on behalf of the federal government. So a little bit about myself before we cruise to the next slide. Again, I have worked for Fiserv for about the last 5 years now, and I've been in financial services for about 25 years. And the thing about EFTPS that's really exciting is the size and magnitude of this program. So this program takes about 500 total people to support. Again, it's online 24/7, staffing is 24/6. And I guess what I'd like to share a little more for you is just some expertise that you would see at Fiserv and other areas of the company. Fiserv is a 40,000 person company. The company had revenue of just under $15 billion for 2020, and we are one of the largest credit card processors in the world. All right, so that's just a little bit about me, a little bit about Fiserv, and we're going to talk about the U.S. Department of Treasury next. Now, this hopefully is some new information, and if not, it'll just reinforce your current knowledge. But within the U.S. Department of Treasury, there are no fewer than 12 bureaus, and the primary Treasury partners that we work with are the Internal Revenue Service, the Bureau of Fiscal Service, and then the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. And I just wanted to call out the difference of roles for these organizations because it's a very important relationship for us to understand to be successful at Fiserv. So the IRS is ultimately the decider of tax policies. So they dictate what happens, what gets collected, what's going to be the policy. The Bureau of Fiscal Service is focused on approving the work. So although the IRS might have a project for us, or they might know what the piece of work is they want done, it will never happen unless fiscal service reads the requirements, understands the requirements, validates it, says, yes, it looks like a legitimate project. We support the spending of this money on behalf of the federal government. IRS, you may now do this work. And so you see there's already a very critical relationship to understand, and then we're yet another party. Now, the party that you don't want to have to talk with if you are an individual is the TIGTA group. And TIGTA is the equivalent of the research and investigation arm of the IRS. And so if you are a small or large criminal and you do fraud and tax evasion, they may come knocking on your door and ask you to take a visit to have some discussions behind bars. I'm sure that has never happened to anybody listening to this today, but just so you know, TIGTA, great partner. Folks on the phone don't want to talk with them today. So here's what our partner structure looks like. So fiscal service provides primary oversight, like we were talking about. The IRS is deciding what the actual policy is, what the dates are, what the formats of payment are allowed to be. Maybe we get to do cryptocurrency in the near future, who knows? But the other dynamic part about this, and I'm sure everyone on this call can appreciate this, is governance and oversight. So in a government program where there is huge financial money at stake in play, the federal government specifically, will assign something called an IVV. And so you see the bank institution on the slide behind me here. And what the IVV does is it's an independent vendor validator. And it's really the equivalent of an auditor. And so this bank institution literally audits all the work that we do at Fiserv. So when we create a project schedule, when we create a requirements document, when we create a change request, they're going to audit it and make sure it makes sense, make sure it's accurate, and that it can be presented back to the IRS for review and to fiscal service for any financial approvals necessary. So this IVV partner adds yet another layer of governance and is a complicating factor in terms of the relationships, right? But it's also a wonderful prevention method to make sure that a vendor like Fiserv performs. So although there's a little bit of natural tension in terms of you don't want as much oversight and you want to be able to perform freely, it's that frenemy relationship, if you will, where they provide a huge benefit to the federal government, and they're actually a great partner, and we've developed a very good partnership with our bank institution, I'm pleased to say. So looking at the rest of the slide, we'll just touch on this real quick. Fiserv is considered a third-party partner or third-party agent, and there are 2 and 3 other vendors that are in this relationship, and they provide IVR and mail delivery services. So one of the things that's most important for this program is to be able to deliver under pressure. And although you may not be thinking this, the federal government can actually be a really fun and unusually partner to work with. So you and your firm in this scenario, if you're part of my team at EFTPS, are accountable to adhere to numerous regulatory and performance standards. And at the end of every day, you have to deliver the mail. And we'll talk about delivering the mail because it's a phrase that we use internally and it's part of the culture we've developed. And what it means is delivering what has been requested. If you say, Sean, what's the delivery date? Or when is the next release happening? And I say, well, it's January 15th. Fantastic answer. But if I say it's January 15th, but maybe we could do it on the 20th or February 2nd or 3rd, I've just inserted a whole bunch of junk mail. And the message is getting convoluted and potentially confusing that partner. And if they go and talk to yet another partner within the government or within this relationship, it's very liable to throw people off kilter or get them worried, even if it was just a possibility. So we try to stay focused on delivering the mail. And so when you deliver the mail, you got to get focused on what's critical, what's urgent, what's important, and what's nice to have, and you got to be methodical about this whole thing. So when you're under a lot of pressure, habits are a fantastic tool that you can leverage. And a habit is any action you take with such efficiency and regularity that it does not require premeditated effort. It would probably be a little disingenuous for me to say in the work environment, it's not going to take any premeditated effort. But my point here is that if you have good habits in the workplace or even in your home or in your athletic endeavors, you don't have to think about it as much, and it really does reduce the pressure because you already know what to do. You've internalized how to respond. And if you don't have a mental picture of how to respond in the moment, you know exactly where to go in terms of your documentation or your standards to respond. So in EFTPS, we have something called streamlined standards, and this is a fantastic example of rules of engagement. And the streamlined standards have been something that has absolutely created a successful environment for all of the parties involved. So within EFTPS, what this looks like is expectations for Fiserv, expectations for the IVR vendor, for the mail delivery vendor, for IRS, for the fiscal service group, as well as the bank institution. And depending on the project, it might actually be one of any of the states around the country if they are sending in tax information or tax withholding information. So the standards have been absolutely fantastic. And we'll just touch on what a few of those things are. And the other point I want to make here is simply that the standards are really only effective and most effective when they serve all the stakeholders. So if they work for Fiserv and it makes me feel good about my work internally, hey, that's great. But if it does not also work for the client, the IRS, Treasury, then we're really not going to be successful at the end of the day. So here are a couple project level examples of good habits. And as you go through this slide, I wanted you to kind of keep in the back of your mind, is there such a thing as a good habit or a bad habit? And I guess what I would say is that's up to you. Decide what you want, good and bad. You can label them or not label them. But a good habit, I guess you would say, is something that helps you achieve your goals at the end of the day. And a bad habit is something that does not help you achieve your goals. So if you're going to label them, I think of them in that context. So for us, we've developed helpful habits or good habits that help us achieve our goals in terms of project and program delivery. Now, in our program, there are well over 50 projects, and my role is the PMO director. So I'm responsible for making sure all of those projects have the resources, the budget, the schedule, and the quality, and are released on time at the end of the day. Now, there's a lot of other partners, and my colleagues are fantastic, and these are the people that actually make it happen. But my name is on the schedule, the budget, the proposals. You get the picture. So from the PMO perspective, I feel a big, heavy weight. And so what has been very helpful for me and the team are these standards. So this slide shows you the phases for the EFTPS program. And what we're looking at here is project initiation and planning. And so what we start with is a change request. That might be to the schedule. We might be bringing in some more resources. We might be updating or doing our very first estimate. But it's the beginning of the project. And at some point, it actually has to get approved. And there is a formal approval process. We also do a very high-level schedule so that we can set expectations for the client. So again, IRS and Treasury, so they know when this would be delivered. And something you see on here is a restart plan. Sometimes these projects get kicked off, and even in the initiation planning phase, they get put on hold. And I guess the reason I'm going to mention the restart plan is so you get a sense of some of the thoroughness that's happening within EFTPS. A lot of times, projects never get canceled and they just go on and they go to production because people don't want to take the time or the effort to save face or save money and cut the project off. In our relationship with the IRS, our bank institution, Treasury, we've decided, hey, if it's not going to be beneficial or if it's not meeting the ultimate client taxpayer expectation, let's put a pause on it, or at least document where we are. Decide later if we're going to continue it or put it off to the side for a few years. So this restart plan will have the key players that you need to reach out to in terms of the organizations and individuals, and it will have the key initial documents. Where were you on the schedule? How much money had already been spent? What are the requirements at that point in time? And when a project gets restarted, it actually gets reevaluated, because if it's been a gap of 1 or 2 or 3 years, there could be a lot of underlying assumptions that need to be reevaluated and looked at to see if it's still valid. It could even be the underlying software solution doesn't exist anymore. So the thoroughness that goes into these different documents, we can't talk about in great detail. That'll put everybody to sleep more than me talking about the federal government. So I'll just go through these other steps here a little bit so you can see some of the quality work that Fiserv does on your behalf with the federal government. So design and build, you've got your detailed schedule at this point. Your project is now approved. Detailed specifications, we've done a security review. There's a code release and test plan and so forth. And as you move into the test and implement phase, this is, of course, where you actually do the test execution. And we have a step here I'll just call out for operational handoff planning. And different companies do this differently, but one of the most important things you can ever do is make sure you are working with your operations partners. So we have a team that's available, as you know, 24/6, and then half a day on that 7th day. And if you just push something into production, or you change a tax type, or you change the rule around a tax type and you push it to production, and you haven't partnered with your operations team, that can be a huge misstep in terms of providing quality service to the taxpayer. Because when a call comes in, the operations team has to be able to answer those calls. So we have a very integrated approach. And it wasn't always that way. But through our continuous improvement process, we have partnered with the operations team, and our operations team is fantastic. They do a great job and have helped us improve our processes. Closure and warranty, some similar things here. You can call it lessons learned, you could call it a retrospective, but the exciting thing here, for me at least, is that there is a bank-facing implementation review. So once this project, typically it's either hardware or software, once this project does go into production, we do write up lessons learned. We do write up an analysis of what has happened, and we meet with the bank institution. And the exciting thing about that is it's not just a document that gets saved up to SharePoint for the next 5 years or 7 years to meet regulatory requirements. If anything comes out of that meeting where either Fiserv or one of the other vendor partners or the bank says, hey, that's really important, we missed it on a couple projects, we need to implement that into our processes in the future. We do that, and we take that action item, we move it into one of our work streams, and we have multiple work streams supporting different aspects of the program, and it becomes a traceable item, and then it becomes part of our new standards going forward. So that's absolutely one of our continuous improvement steps, and it's worked really well the last several years. Program level examples of good habits. We've got a communications plan, we've got a change management governance, and we have these workflow diagrams. And so most of you probably know what these are, so we're not going to spend tons of time on them. But what I'd like to share with you, I think the most valuable item on this has been having these things documented and actually training people on them. And as new people come on board into the program, or maybe they transfer in and out of departments or organizations, whether it's the IRS or the Treasury or Fiserv or the bank, we do periodic training so that they become indoctrinated into, oh, what are my communications plans? How do we handle change governance? And in terms of a workflow, since this is a huge program, who does what and what are the steps? Well, the first thing you want to do is figure out what are my steps, and that's where the workflow diagram comes in. But the second part of that is looking at the diagram and then seeing which group is responsible for which activity. So if you have the bandwidth or the experts within your team to do that, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic way to onboard people, to train people, and again, keep all of your partners working from the same set of standards. So our program, EFTPS, benefits from good habits by implementing the streamlined standards. So I'm starting to tie the habits into the standards, and how does this really help you be successful under stress? And so the next few topics and stories I'm going to share with you will show some of the stress that our program gets put under. But again, these standards, they help you diffuse potential conflicts around expectations, it ramps people up, it gets everybody aligned, and really is just a wonderful tool. And although many companies, many groups say that they have standards, it's more rare to see it implemented than it is to see it documented. So in this little cartoon I wanted to share with you, we have stressed out Smurf, that's before the standards, and then we have chillin' Smurf after the standards. And I think there's an analogy there for our company. We had a lot of people that were very stressed out when they didn't know who to go for an answer. And now that they do, they're much more relaxed. All right, we're going to start tying in quality and relevant communications. In our communications with the federal government, you can imagine that there are some fairly important topics that come up in terms of taxes when you're talking trillions of dollars. So the messaging that we provide has to be reliable, meaning reproducible across teams, across individuals, and it has to be valid, meaning accurate. So the example I was going to share with you today is simply all parties have to report the same feasibility timing of a new release project for software. If I go to the test team and the director of development and the project manager and I get different answers, we're not having good reliability. But if all parties are accurate, then I've got some reliability. Now, if they all report bad dates and they say, oh, yeah, we can do that by October 10th, no problem, and it's not possible, it's absolutely not helpful, right? So they have to not only all have the same answer and give me reliable results over time when I talk to different parties, it has to be valid, meaning accurate. So reliable plus valid, you're going to get a lot of client trust and client love. So for EFTPS, here's where the operations management pressure comes in. This platform processes daily payments up to 10 billion US dollars. The system balances to the penny every single day. There are over 15 unique tax payment streams. So you can think of a credit card payment as one stream. There are other methods. And multiple organizations are coordinating this system with a series of checks and balances and security protocols to make sure that the payments go through in a timely manner and that they get distributed and sent to the federal government. So with our program, there's so much information and so much money happening and from different streams and participants in the government and the tax system, you have to decide what to report on. And so I thought I'd throw this acronym at you here, and hopefully you find it useful. There are 3 questions that you should ask yourself when you decide what to report on if you have a lot of information. And in our scenario with EFTPS, we've decided to keep it fun. So is it functional? Is it useful? And if it's necessary. And if it doesn't meet that criteria, we make a recommendation to the bank institution to say, hey, we think this could be eliminated or changed. If our partner at the bank says, yes, that makes sense, let's reduce the overhead and make people more efficient, then we will present that to the IRS and the Treasury. But one thing to note here is that we always go to our bank institution partner first because they are looking at the quality of this work and trying to make it as efficient as possible. Here's some more operations management pressure. And this will really put into the scale what $3 trillion does. So this is a snapshot from the Fortune Global 500 from 2020. And what you'll see on here is Walmart is the single biggest company out there in terms of gross revenue worldwide with just over $524 billion. Then we've got 3 large institutions from China, starting with the Sinopec Group at $407 billion. And it trails down to about $275 billion with Toyota Motor Company. Needless to say, depending on the part of the world you live in, these are institutions you absolutely know, and you expect them to perform at the highest levels. If you don't perform at the highest levels, people are going to hear about it. And so for us, when it's money, you add pressure on top of daily operations, retail operations. People want to know that their taxes got paid or that their refunds came back so that they can carry on with their lives or their business. So here's some examples just in the past 2 years that EFTPS had to handle. And we have natural disaster tax filing date changes every so often, Hurricane Katrina back in the day, and other ones since then, in fact. But most recently, COVID-19. You're probably familiar that the tax filing date was changed in 2020 to July 15th. This year, the tax filing date was moved to May 17th. And I just want to paint a little bit of a picture, which I think you'll appreciate, of how difficult this is and how important the messaging around your approach becomes. So in our scenario, Fiserv was asked middle of December, can you change the tax filing date from April 15th to July 15th? And I'm talking about 2020 now. Well, it just so happens that there's really only 2 potential releases where that could happen, unless trade-offs are made. There's a release that happens right after January. Booked, can't change it, absolutely has to happen because it has to do with taxes for the next year. Next release was, let's say, in March. Also booked because we plan ahead. Next release is in May. Also booked because you have to plan ahead. Okay, so now let's talk about some trade-offs. If we're going to change the tax filing date, how much effort is it, first of all? Who's going to do it? What are the different organizations that we need to partner with? The company that does IVR is going to need to be involved. The company that does mailings needs to be involved. The IRS absolutely is going to be putting messaging up on their website, and so we have to partner with them and make sure that all of these parties can do the work being requested at the same time. So when we come back to the table and we say, well, that's a lot of work, we're not sure we can do it. Or testing says they can do it, but development says no way. If we don't have consistency of the message coming back, it's going to add a lot of pressure and make us look potentially unprofessional. So this underscores the importance of quality communication, and you really have to maintain your composure under pressure. So it'd be really easy for, say, maybe the PMO director or the director or VP of development to say, yeah, we can do that, no problem. But then when the bank or the IRS talks to one of our other divisions, let's just say it's the testing group, and they say, oh, holy cow, no, I don't think we can do that. We would have to set up a whole new environment or purge the data and pull in new data. Instantly, you have some huge conflicts in terms of the message, so your reliability has gone down, confidence from the client has gone down, and potentially really throwing ourselves into a tailspin because not everybody's talking to everybody. So what we've done is we've said, and you'll appreciate this from a project management standpoint, program management standpoint, all communication has to come through the project manager. And we force that and we reinforce it all the time. So if you're in testing and you get asked for a date, you say, I would love to help you, but let's make sure we talk to Ron. He's our project manager for this project. Let's make sure that we talk to Karina. She's managing that project. And we hold to that. And it works. I will tell you, it works. And then we bring that information together. We talk with our bank institution. And we say, here's the information that we have collected. This appears to be the best information we have. We're ready to talk to the other vendor partners, make sure that all of us are aligned. And if we're aligned, then let's have that meeting next Wednesday with IRS and Treasury and say, yes, we can make that change to July 15th. Just looking backward, yes, Fiserv and the vendor partners were able to make those changes. And you're welcome. Your tax deadlines were extended. So this demonstrates the power of project visualization. And while this is a tragic event in the history of our country and NASA's space program, it's a very good example that we can use and take home to whether it's our personal or professional lives. So let's take a look at it. The engineers in the pre-launch phase of the project were looking at this table here. And you'll see that there's some quality data. And we are talking about rocket scientists, so they know their stuff. There was no confusion over what this data was or what it meant. But it's difficult to see what the conclusion should be here. And in hindsight, with the benefit of a slightly different approach and a graph with a trend chart, you might be able to determine by looking at this that there is a huge opportunity for the O-rings to fail on this particular space shuttle when the temperatures get colder. So if you add a red line and chart it along the temperature, you will see that the likelihood of failure increases dramatically. And the forecast temperature was between 25 and 30 degrees. So there was a pretty high risk in terms of the O-ring failing. And that's exactly what happened. And tragically, the astronauts lost their lives on this day. And so the point I'm making here is really make sure you use the right visualization. Whatever that is that you need to pull in, change your chart, make it a pie chart, make it a radar chart, whatever it is, make sure that it's useful and helps you make that decision. Sometimes we get this information overload, and especially in the 2020s, we have information overload. People are looking at Instagram for split second. Facebook is, well, maybe my generation, but that's also seconds. We've got Snapchat and other things, and the quality of information is extremely important. And if you're relying on a quick snapshot, it has to be powerful and tell you the right story if it's going to help you make a good decision. Now we're just going to talk about a few of the examples on this slide, but these will help emphasize the importance of communication. And if you can take these examples and translate this into the potential impacts of a tax situation with tax holders, you'll understand why we focus so much on communications excellence. So first, top left, Netflix cuties. Now, Netflix is a fantastic company. One of my best friends works there. Silicon Valley gem. Everybody in the world practically streaming Netflix this day and age. But this past year, Netflix introduced a new series called Netflix Cuties, and it absolutely backfired on them due to the messaging that came out with the trailers. And what happened is they were picturing young girls in risque dance outfits joining a dance crew. And ironically, the film was supposed to critique the exact opposite, where modern day culture forces children to grow up too fast. They caught huge backlash for this. The series ultimately was cut, it was shut down, and while their hearts were in the right place, the messaging didn't shine through. Next example we'll look at is Disney and May the 4th be with you. And what happened here is Disney created an Instagram campaign in 2020 and said, hey, everybody come on and post what you want. Get on our Instagram feed. Put the hashtag May the 4th be with you. And shortly after, tens of thousands and ultimately millions of people start posting, they add a disclaimer that says, by the way, anything you post and say, pound, May the 4th be with you, with that hashtag, belongs to Disney. Huge backlash, blew up in their face immediately. And within just a couple hours, they had to issue another disclaimer. And it was trying to soften the legal message. Well, people were still outraged. And they had to issue yet a third disclaimer just another couple hours later to alleviate those concerns. So I don't think Disney's brand is going anywhere as a result of this. People still love them. It's an amazing place. But people absolutely don't want to be told just because you put a hashtag on something that it belongs to Disney. That's just not going to happen. So lesson learned for Disney. Last one we'll talk about on this slide is Zoom bombing. And you may have even been a victim of this past year, but what is Zoom bombing? Okay. Visual. People started using Zoom in tremendous numbers this past year. It's probably one of the most high-growth companies of all of 2020 due to the fact that we had COVID and people that were still fortunate to be employed were doing video conferencing in tremendous numbers. Well, it turns out that Zoom's security for their meeting software wasn't as secure as some of the other platforms. In fact, I didn't hear anything about Microsoft Teams or WebEx or Google or the other providers. That aside, what started happening is people were hacking into meetings, showing their faces, asking questions, disrupting, coming in and leaving, putting up pictures of random things. And in some cases, and in many cases, people experienced random pornography, just things you just don't want to happen in your personal or your professional Zoom meeting. Huge blow up on Zoom's part. They very quickly took their security team, took their engineers, updated their software, pushed it all out, and they did lose a good amount of brand equity. But because the pandemic and because COVID-19 lasted so long, they continued to go on and be successful. But they caught huge backlash for that, and you just don't want to have to experience that if there's a way to avoid it. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't know that was a possibility early on, but can guarantee you that they are going to be well aware before they open their platform up to the next 10 times scale. They'll be ready for it. I'd be remiss if we didn't share just a few meeting expectations and tips during what we hope is the tail end of the COVID-19 pandemic. Video is absolutely commonplace now, and you absolutely have to have a backup. So if you use Microsoft Teams, if you use Zooms, make sure that you have at least one or the other as a backup. Maybe Google Meet works for you. Let's talk about yourself on video. Most people don't like to look at themselves on video. I don't think that's because they don't like to look at themselves. I think it's because it's just distracting. And so if you're getting distracted by your own video, hide it, move it to a different part of the screen. But what you really want to do is make sure that the person you're addressing, whoever's in the meeting with you, that their image is somewhat close to where your camera is so that you can be looking at them or at least have the appearance of looking at them. And while that might be a little hard, with a little practice, it actually ends up coming off very naturally over time. Also, let's just say background and grooming. They are important. So depending on the image you want to present, you should consider your grooming. So are you going to comb your hair in the morning? If you put on makeup, are you going to put on makeup in the morning? And then your background, if you don't have a nice, let's just say office or bedroom with a clean painted wall behind you or some beautiful mural, do you want yourself, looking out at the street? What is the image that you're going to do that projects your level of professionalism or casualness? So just figure that out. Maybe buy a screen for behind yourself, or go into a separate room for just that portion of the day when you have your video meetings. But think about that. And we'll cover point 2 here, and then we'll move on. Point 2 is really the rules of engagement. So again, if everybody uses Teams, fantastic. If everybody uses Google Meet, fantastic. But as an example, it's really good to already have everybody on your team know what to expect so that software is installed, so that 2 minutes before the meeting, when they click on the link to say, hey, Sean, how's it going? They're not all of a sudden hit with a surprise download link to say, oh, you need to install WebEx, Teams, Google. Get those standards out there early. It's easy, it's helpful, and people really appreciate that. Similarly, establishing the communication protocol for how to get in touch with someone quickly. Is it an instant message? Is it a text message? Is it a phone call? Very easy to establish. Most places don't actually do it. Extremely helpful. So within EFTPS, we have a tool internally that we can message each other. And if it's not fast enough, we'll just walk over or call somebody right away. But we don't wait forever if it's urgent. Our normal expectation is a 24-hour turnaround for email. Reality these days, less than 2 hours unless people are really busy. So you just got to make sure you're getting those expectations and cultural norms set within your work group or within your company. Okay, so a little bit more about communications and how important it is to know how to say it. What you say matters. These are coaching examples, but it could be from the office, it could be at home. And I'll take a personal example first. So we'll just make up a name. I had a coach, Jay. And this is when I was in early years of high school, very competitive soccer. And I didn't usually mess off. I was one of the more competitive kids, so I was pretty focused. But one day I was having fun, telling jokes, and all of a sudden Coach gets really mad. Coach was big, Coach was intimidating, and he yells, Sean, start running. So I started running. And I do one lap, and I come by, I'm looking at Coach. I do another lap, I come by, I'm looking at Coach. I do another lap, come by, looking at Coach. I do this 12 times. I'm now at 3 miles. And I come by, and Coach looks up, and he's like, Sean, where you been? And I'm almost in tears. I'm like 13, 14 years old. And I'm like, you told me to run. And he just looks at me, and he actually chuckled. And to him, it was absolutely no big deal. To me, I was like devastated for 20 minutes. But he's like, well, get back in there. You're ready to go. Pay attention. And so it just shows you the impact of your message, how you say it, when you say it, what your demeanor is so important. Next example here, and I've changed the details a little bit here, but it's a true example. There was a young girl who went to high school where my friend James Leith coached. And in this particular example, Samantha is the name we'll use, was hanging out after school. And Coach James just happened to see her. And he says, hey, Samantha, great to see you, how are you doing? And she said, oh, great, thanks, I'm waiting for my mom. And I guess the coaches knew each other or whatever. Well, can I give you a ride? Do you need a ride? Are you okay? No, I'm okay, but thank you so much. Well, come to find out about a week later, Samantha comes back to Coach and says, hey, Coach, I just wanted to let you know it's really important to tell you. Nobody had said my name for a week, and I was starting to feel like I didn't matter, and I was actually going to kill myself that night. And so just reaching out to people, being authentic and genuine, being a good person can really make somebody's day. It can make your personal relationship or your work relationship that much better. Be pleasant, be caring. If you have an option between being kind and being right, be kind. All right? So, last example here, Sir Alex Ferguson. Now, you probably don't know too many sirs, but Sir Alex Ferguson is the probably winningest coach in Manchester United history. Absolutely won the most titles with this with this sports team, and I'm a soccer fan. And the guy is just a legend. And to put it, I guess, into American terms, think of your most famous either actor or sports team coach, and Sir Alex Ferguson is that person. Men's or women's sports, doesn't matter. He's just a legend over in the UK. And every year when he would have brand new professional athletes come onto his team who are making tens of millions of dollars, what he would do is he would have them clean the locker rooms. And part of that is cleaning the urinals. And it actually wasn't a form of hazing at all. But in this one example, one of the players had come back to the coach, and it had been about 2 months, and he was just really kind of not pleased. He's like, man, I'm a professional. I'm making $5 million a year. And he came very respectful. He's basically like, Coach, do I have to do this any longer? Like, why are you inspecting where I cleaned the bathroom? And they had been told to clean behind the urinals and below them. And the coach says, well, if I can't trust you to take care of the little things, how can I trust you to go out in front of 80,000 fans and the world and do everything that matters? And that stuck with that person and a whole bunch of other people since. So the messaging and how you say it really matters. So habits, as you can tell, really matter. They can reduce the pressure on you because you can leverage your habits to have an automated response. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. Mahatma Gandhi. Here are a couple examples of some useful habits. Steph Curry, Golden State Warriors. 30 minutes before every workout, Steph Curry is suited up taking practice shots, and on a daily basis, he takes at least 130 shots before his teammates. And after a workout, he doesn't leave the court until he has at least 5 swish free throws, which means the ball does not touch the rim. For mortals, like probably you and I, that's almost impossible. For him, it's what makes him one of the best free throw shooters in the world and best three-point artists in the world. Going to a business example, Arianna Huffington. Well, she used to be an absolute workaholic, and she actually almost killed herself. She got so tired that she fell and hit her head and started bleeding, and somebody came in and woke her up, and she potentially could have, bled to death. But she recognized that she had this horrible habit of working so hard and not getting rest and not having nourishment that she started practicing yoga and meditation every day. And that helps keep her energized and keeps her stress levels down and lets her keep focused on what's important. Stephen King, extremely famous author. He has a habit of keeping his workspace arranged just so that when he comes in, he can very quickly get into the right frame of mind to be creative and think of some of the scariest things in the world to put on paper and write books for us. And that's his way of getting himself prepared to write. So when you are focused, you're in this position for success. And this is how these people use habits to reduce stress and position themselves for success. Most of you are familiar with the name Stephen Covey and the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I'm going to just go through these quickly as a refresher. The thing I'm going to focus on here is that the first 3 habits, being proactive, beginning with the end in mind, putting first things first, these are really things for the independent person. So think of somebody who's perhaps younger or hasn't worked as many years in the workforce, but they're really more focused on self. These are things where I'm focusing on habits that will help me. As that person matures, at some point you have to start thinking of others and you move into interdependence. And so I got to think of win-win, and I got to really understand what it is that this other person wants. And okay, once I understand them, then I can try to help them understand my point of view. And then we can collaborate and make things better, right? For me, I've got teenage boys. I got 15 and 17. And so they're very much in the world revolves around me stage, and they're becoming young adults, and they're starting to mature into this interdependence. And they're like, well, if I want to go out in the boat this weekend, I better help Dad wax that so that he doesn't have to do it and he's not tired and he actually wants to take it out so he doesn't feel like it's all on him. And so that interdependence is starting to happen in simple things like that, right? And then, of course, once you've got this skill set, you want to continuously improve it. Over my years, which is, again, about 25 plus years of project and program management and financial services, I've developed these 13 habits, and I thought it would be exciting to share them. So you might find them useful. If you do, fantastic. Leverage them, use them, tweak them, whatever you need to do. First one, and these are in rank order, is anchoring the team so they know why the work is important. If you can let people know what it is they're doing and why it's important, you'll have so much more buy-in. If everybody knows this story of the bricklayer, and the bricklayer gets really disengaged. But then when somebody tells the bricklayer that this is going to be a church and this is where people are going to come for communions, it changes its whole perspective, right? So, whatever the message is or the reason for doing the work, it can be very valuable. It's just so valuable. Next, creating a safe place for the team. Again, people have to feel safe to be able to share their opinions, and if you want to get the best out of people, you are going to want their honest opinions, and you're going to want authentic feedback. We don't want to attack each other, but we should absolutely be able to disagree, right? Number 3, communicating in a timely manner. If I can't come to a meeting, but I don't tell people until 5 minutes before that meeting, and it's been scheduled for 3 weeks, not very respectful, not very helpful. So communicate in a timely manner. Number 4, adapting the tools and techniques for the situation. If I just got Zoom bombed, darn straight, I'm going to pull in Google Meet or Microsoft Teams or WebEx, whatever it is. But adapt your tools and techniques for the situation. If that table with data in the Challenger example doesn't work, think of a chart and a visualization that's going to be more meaningful and impactful. And then involving all the stakeholders. And by that, I don't mean send it to the entire company. What I mean by that is get the right people and make sure that they all are informed and have an opportunity to at least be informed and or ask questions and get involved one way or another. And again, that's a way of getting the message and the anchor set for that team. And continue to learn, right? It's number 6, don't ever stop learning. If you are in technology, you already know this, but the programming languages change every couple of years. The storage method changes every couple of years. Everything's changing. So if you're not learning, pretty soon you have the opportunity to become obsolete. Nobody wants that in technology. And again, strong planning. Number 7 goes without saying. Proper planning prevents pretty poor performance. Those are my 6 P's of project management. Number 8, manage stress for self, team, and stakeholders. If you are capable, if you believe you can do it, try to handle stressful conversations, stressful actions for the team. And by that, what I mean is if you get a message and it's totally changing the direction of your project, don't just send it out to the team or blurt it out in the project meeting the next morning. Try to really understand it, figure out what the impacts are, and then figure out who are the single biggest 3, 4, 5 stakeholders that need to know about that. Give them time to absorb that. But don't bring that to a meeting with 20 people and then let everybody get all agitated. Try to figure out what is the true meaning behind that message, why is that decision made, and then give that information to others so that they can help you support that message. Even if you don't agree with it, you're still going to have to support it if it's a client situation, right? If you're doing consulting. And then share that with the rest of the team for execution. Number 9, focus on solutions. Okay, yes, we all focus on solutions, but the idea here is that we're not going to get spun up about all of the politics or the frustrations. Yes, these things do have to be addressed. Yes, they're real, but focus on solutions. When you have the chance, again, focus on positivity. People will be much more drawn to you and just naturally follow you as a leader if you can have them help focus on solutions. Number 10, it's okay to recruit a strong team. If you know there are people that you want for your project, ask for them. It's okay to give people compliments. Managers love to know that their people are in demand. And if you are running a high-profile project, or even if it's a medium-profile project, or a low-profile project, you're still going to want the strongest team possible. So go out and ask for those people. Don't just say, hey, I need 3 developers, 2 project managers. Figure out what it is you need. And then if you can, tactically, go ahead and recruit that team. 11, 12, and 13, we'll go through a little more quickly. But again, manage risks and issues proactively. Don't wait a week or 2 weeks to tell people about a risk or an issue if you already heard about it and it's substantial. Publish it immediately and then handle it in your team meeting. But at least you've let people know immediately what that risk or issue is. Celebration, most of us don't do enough celebration. I make a huge effort to do celebrating, and I'll give you an example. There was a very large project that involved about 70 people at Fiserv, and it was a program that I was a part of. And I made a point of working with my team and the leaders on the team to personally sign thank you cards and then purchase a Yeti mug with our company logo and send it to all of those people as a surprise during COVID. And it was so fun to see the thank yous that came in, and some of the messages I wouldn't have expected, but it was like, this really means a lot to me. Thanks for recognizing me. I appreciate that somebody took the time. Just short, sweet notes. A lot of people took pictures with their cup and said, "This is so cool. Thanks for recognizing me." It was really nice. And it wasn't a mind game. It wasn't like to try to trick people into working harder. It was just to, again, in an attempt to be authentic, what can I do? And what would make people feel appreciated? And in this case, during the COVID time frame. And so I encourage celebration. Lastly, knowing when to pivot. And maybe I'll just go back to the Zoom example here, but if my Zoom is not working or something keeps happening with a particular piece of software, pivot, change, go somewhere else, try a different method. If in a relationship you're trying to get a message through to somebody and it's not working, maybe talk to somebody that knows that person really well. Ask them how they would explain concept XYZ to them, and then try it that way. But pivot, don't keep banging your hammer on the same wall in the same place if you're not getting the result you want. So at this point, we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance. And some of you might be saying, well, I don't need habits. We're good. Or, you know what, Sean, you guys are EFTPS, you're at Fiserv, your financial services, your tax. This doesn't really apply to me. But I'm here to tell you that it absolutely does. And I'm here to tell you that regardless of what industry you're in, these habits do matter, and they will help you reduce pressure and create excellent results. So it doesn't matter if you're in biotech, communications, construction, these are real techniques. So the first one that we're going to share is called habit stacking. And if you want to start creating a habit, it's fantastic to take a small behavior, and if you sequence it, then you won't have to motivate yourself to have it grow. It'll just happen naturally, like a good seed planted in a good spot. And so if you think about a rice seed planted at the right time of year, when the rains come regularly, with the right temperatures, it's going to be very easy to get it to grow, as opposed to if you plant it in the middle in the heat of summer with no rain, right? So think in terms of habits. How do you make it easy? And within EFTPS, most of our habits at this point are ingrained at a high level, and if people don't have them memorized, they have standards that they can refer to, whether it's a template document or a program standard. And as you build these habits, it's kind of like the story of the Matryoshka doll, where you have habit A, B, C, D, and they build on each other until at the end you have in this case, the largest Matryoshka doll, which is sometimes the most beautiful and elegant. And if you can do this with me conceptually, it contains all of those habits as well. And so it's also the most functional in the workplace or at home. So habit stacking for project managers, here's an example for planning. This framework uses a very specific lexicon. So if you'll notice, it's got after, before the current habit, I will, new habit. And it works because you're already building on a habit. So if you take the example of before I go home each day, I will review my schedule for the remainder of this week and my schedule for next week. Fantastic. After reviewing my schedule, I will review my task list. After reviewing my task list, I will reassess priorities and ensure the highest priorities are what I work on tomorrow morning. And then the next morning, after I arrive at work, I will check my priorities so I don't get distracted by emails or messages. So I will work on my highest priorities first is my planning habit target that I want to achieve here. But you can see that I'm stacking these things here, and if I do them on a daily basis, they become ingrained very quickly. Another example, which is sometimes bane of project managers, but it's really one of the most successful key success factors for project managers, is putting together minutes after meetings. So if you wanted to, for instance, create a habit of putting out outstanding minutes, by outstanding I mean excellent, what you would do is you would say, after I host the weekly team meeting, I will write up the minutes and the action items. After I write up the minutes and action items, I will make updates to the schedule. Before I send the project team a link to the minutes and schedule, I will proofread my work for accuracy. And the reason it works, again, is bullet number 2 on the left. It works because you're building on a habit that already exists. So after or before the current habit, I will do something new. This is a really important concept, and I'm excited to share this one with you because I founded the Arvada Triathlon Club back in 2008. And this is a term that came to me through triathlon training. So there's something called junk training, and I yell to you, don't do it. It's ineffective habit stacking. And so triathletes practice swimming, biking, and running. So if you're not familiar with triathlons or triathletes, that's what you do. You swim, you bike, you run. And triathletes, for the most part, are almost religious for sticking to their workout routines. And in fact, some triathletes use habit stacking to develop wonderfully consistent training regimens. They'll wake up in the morning, they'll stretch, they'll eat very specific foods, they'll run very specific distances. They put all of their information into their watch or their Garmin or whatever the device is. But let's consider what happens when people aren't training well and they just are going through the motions, right? As an athlete, you can't train very well when you're injured or fatigued or malnourished. Junk training is referring to the wasted effort. So if my goal as a triathlete is to swim as fast as possible, to bike as fast as possible, and to run as fast as possible, but my workout, I can only go at 70% speed or 80% speed due to an injury, and I'm preventing healing of my injury, I am not getting faster. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to do junk training. So now I've got this bad habit of training while I'm injured. And it's far more effective to get yourself healthy and then train at that fast speed if your goal is to get faster. It will also help you heal so you're not hurting your body. So as you're seeking to master these new skills in your professional and personal life, don't do junk training. Junk training is horrible. It's a new term, perhaps. Learn it, use it, don't do it. So last example for habit stacking for home life. So we did professional, we talked about junk training, now habit stacking for home life. If your habit is to do something with your family and pay attention and not be distracted by your phone, this is an example you could use. Before you go upstairs when you come home, you greet your family. After you greet your family, you put your phone on the charger. After the phone goes on the charger, you take your shoes off, you go upstairs, and then after you go upstairs, you return, walk the dog with the family. Fantastic. But you can see that there's a little sequence here, and they build on each other. And then pretty soon, you're going to be walking the dog with the family every day or every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever it is. So pre- and post-event habits to consider. Olympic gymnasts, and I actually competed NCAA gymnastics in college, we visualize the routine, I should say they, the Olympics, and then me in college, visualize the routine flawlessly before walking up to the apparatus. And it's actually really fascinating. I learned a lot about visualization when I did this. When I first learned to do visualization, I would close my eyes and go through the moves in my routines, whether it was high bar or parallel bars or rings. And there were times when I could see myself falling. And it was exactly where I usually fall during training or if it was a new or difficult move. But by visualizing, doing that series of movements perfectly, I started to do them perfectly in my warm-ups and in the competitions. The Blue Angels, these are some of the most amazing pilots in the world, and other naval air show teams do this as well, but they walk through every single sequence of their air show before takeoff, and then they debrief afterwards and say what went well, what didn't go well, how can we get better. So improving project management outcomes by eliminating or minimizing poor habits is extremely important. Some people, like Justin Bieber here, have attained a certain level of success despite their ineffective habits. Now, as he was a young person, he's still a young adult, but as he was a young person growing up, he did some things that, a lot of us wouldn't be so proud of. And it almost sabotaged his entire career. His little entourage didn't like him. His managers didn't necessarily like him. Fans started to turn against him. And ultimately, he actually started to change his lifestyles. And at this point, has found a life partner, got married, appears to be very happy and has much better habits and is not, peeing in the plants in the hotel lobby before going to bed at night after partying for 12 hours. So he's an example of somebody who was successful despite bad habits, but he's actually changed it. And thankfully, I think he's going to salvage his career. And if you like his music, this is great. He'll be around for quite a while. If not, you can just choose another artist. But when you overdo these ineffective habits, it really can hold you back. Now, another example here that I thought I would share is about Naomi Osaka, and she recently was in Wimbledon 2021, so that's this summer. And what happened is, from a habit standpoint, every athlete has to come to the table and do interviews with all these different organizations. And the habit in this case is Wimbledon requiring athletes to interview, regardless of if they're tired or if they're jet lagged or if they just won or if they just lost. But they always have this media attention. And Naomi has severe anxiety, we learned. And she basically withdrew from the Wimbledon, and Wimbledon tried to give her this big backlash and, no, and you're naughty and you need to be giving us interviews. We're not going to invite you back in the future, kind of stuff. Thankfully, the community rallied around her, including many other world-class athletes, and said, you know what, mental health is really important. And if somebody's not prepared to interview, they probably should take that time. So this is an opportunity to look at your habit inventory and prioritize. So in this example, Andre's name is in the top left of the table. And what you're seeing here is 5 different habits that he might like to develop. One vertical column shows impact on professional life, then you see impact on home life, and then a cumulative impact score. So if you rank order these, you would say, okay, Andre, first work on maintaining your health, then communicating in a timely manner. So you can take this table, download one from the web, whatever you want to do. But if you only have time to work on one thing, you're going to work on what we call a keystone habit. And that would be the habit that influences the most other aspects of your life, personal or professional. So these keystone habits really help you address pressure. And in your professional life, personal life, like I said, it's absolutely the go-to because you're ingraining what your response is. So for Andre, he wants to improve his health and believes it will have a high impact both at work and at home. And good health is going to give him that energy to focus on his day, be a fantastic project manager, and then have a good home life with friends and family. The person who came up with this keystone habit concept is a famous author by the name of Charles Duhigg. And he says if you only have the time to work on 1 or 2 habits, select the one that's going to have the biggest or the broadest overall impact, and that's where you invest your time. So here's a possible tool for you to use at home. This is a spreadsheet that I made, but you can copy this. You could put your own together in Excel or Word, download one. But this is an example for October of 2021. It's got some habits on that left column there. And really it's just helping you reinforce the fact that, yes, I did do this on these days. So whether it's a once a week or a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, you pick the habit and you decide where you want it to show up. And then as you're building those habits, as you're attempting to build them, you check it off. It's not a scorecard for you to say, oh, I give myself an A this week or an F. What it does is it gives you a certain satisfaction. And we'll see where that satisfaction comes in on the next couple of slides. So the habit loop is all about how to change a habit and even how to create a habit. But again, Charles Duhigg, author of Power of Habit, says to change a habit, what you want to do is you want to identify the routine, experiment with these rewards, and then you're going to isolate the cue and have a plan. So that way, when you identify something that's cueing you to do something, you take away that cue, you're probably not going to have that routine anymore. Now, James Clear, again, another famous author, a slightly more recent book called Atomic Habits, builds on Duhigg's work. And what he says is, I have something called the habit loop. And so he added the craving and the response and the reward. So he's got basically one more feature than Charles Duhigg. But the idea is to make or break a habit. And in this case, we're going to use the example of breaking. You're going to make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying. So, who's going to want to do something that is all of those things, right? So if it's hard to do or find, it's invisible. If it's unattractive, or if it's difficult and unsatisfying, you're not going to do it. So that's how you can break a non-effective habit or a bad habit. To create an effective habit, you're going to make it obvious, you're going to make it attractive, you're going to make it easy, you're going to make it satisfying. So for me, I might take an example of, I don't want to stop at McDonald's every day and get a Diet Coke. So I'm going to break that habit. So instead of driving by McDonald's every day, I'm going to take a different route and I'm going to get to work some other way. So I just took away the cue, right? Now to create the effective habit, maybe I'm going to go by Starbucks and buy green tea. Fantastic. Or if I don't want to do anything, I'll skip both stores and drive right to work. But what you're doing in this Starbucks example is I'm going over here to see what my good habit is that I want to build and saying it's obvious. Oh, there's Starbucks. Fantastic. I've changed my driving route. Yes, it's attractive. They have a wonderful logo and green tea with honey smells wonderful, tastes great. And make it easy. Well, I'm going to go through the drive-thru. On top of that, I'm going to put the app on my phone. I'll just shine my little phone every time I drive through. Wonderful. I've now just created a different and effective habit. So it's really important to create space for a habit, and that's your implementation intention. So you've got to think a little bit about how often you need to do this habit or want to do it, when it's going to take place, and when situation X arises, I will perform response Y. So for instance, if I wanted to get into the habit of snowboarding, and today I don't snowboard, I don't know how to snowboard. Well, I got to figure out when am I going to do it. So if I work full time, it's probably going to be Saturday, Sunday, at least for some period of time until I get sponsored and go on the world tour. And I have to figure out what resort it's going to be at. So I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to do it every Saturday and Sunday for the next 3 months. I'm going to go to Copper Mountain because that's my favorite mountain. And I'm only going to go between 8 and 1 because I don't want to get stuck in traffic. So I've got my behavior, I've got my time, I've got my location. And that's how you create space for your new habit. So one more technique that you can add, this is called identity-based habits. And identity-based habits are where you identify yourself with this habit. So let's say you taking the Diet Coke example, and you tend to have a habit of drinking sodas and Diet Cokes in particular. One of the things you do is you actually create this personal statement. You can say, I do not drink Diet Coke, I do not drink soda. And so that's my identity. And then my performance is, well, I don't drink it. So I don't drive by it, and I don't accept it when someone offers it to me. Now my appearance is the way the world perceives me. So the key thing to take away from this example is that once you've decided on the person you want to be and you prove it to yourself with these big or small wins, you're going to have a higher probability of success, because now my statement to myself is I don't drink soda. So it's not a decision. I don't do it, and over time on my habit tracker I can see that I didn't do it, and the world sees that I didn't do it. It's going to reinforce that positive habit. The world's perceiving me the way I want to be perceived. So some folks have asked me, Sean, how long does it take to create a new habit? And very famous author Malcolm Gladwell says 10,000 hours. So if you want to be a professional soccer player or professional level soccer player, minimum 10,000 hours, or concert pianist, 10,000 hours. Tiger Woods used to say, 6 hours of practice is a nice half day. But I will tell you that every person is different, and you just need to pick a strategy that makes you successful with the least overall effort and the best overall results. But the key focus that I would emphasize is make it easy and make it attractive to continue those new habits. So if you want to start snowboarding, don't drive to the far end of the mountain range. Go to the resort closest to you or that has the nicest resort, right? You don't want to spend 4 hours driving to Durango if there's a fantastic resort called Vail just 30 minutes from you. Figure out how to make it easy and attractive and what gets you the best results. Something that I've done for my athletes, I coach soccer at the high school level, is get folks into the river. And I give this example because it applies to your personal life and work life. And what the river is getting everybody to a feeling of authenticity and quality relationships. So you can read the acronym here: relevant, important, validated, engaged, excited, revered. But the whole point of this is that you have to have a real relationship. If I make you feel relevant and you say hi to me in the office and I say, oh, hey, I haven't seen you in a really long time. I heard that somebody in your family wasn't well. How are they feeling? You're obviously relevant to me, right? I'm taking the time to show you that you're important to me because I care about your family and I'm asking how you are. And if you say, well, they're not well, they're going to need some help, And I say, oh, I'm sorry to hear they're not well. That must be really tough. I'm validating that I heard you, right? That's great feedback. It's showing that you've got this two-way relationship communication skill going on. And if you're showing that you're engaged with that person, again, you're building on that relationship. And then revered, this one's a little harder, but just, really cherishing that relationship. Make time for those people who count, right? If you can do this, you'll have some of the most fantastic working relationships and personal relationships of anybody around you, because it's not common practice. If you look at the quote over here on the side, it's attributed to Theodore Roosevelt, but it says, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And what I would do is I would actually build on that. And Maya Angelou has a quote that says, people will forget what you say, but they will never forget how you make them feel. And I guarantee if you take 5 minutes after this presentation is over and think about somebody that made you feel special as a student or an athlete or even a professional, it's going to be the feeling. You may not even remember why, but you're going to remember that person. And that's one of the keys to creating lasting relationships. The river is something that I learned from sports psychologist Jerry Lynch, and I'm working on it all the time, trying to apply it at both home and work. So I wanted to leave you some next steps, things to help you take control of your habits, really address pressure in your personal and professional lives, and make diamonds out of that pressure, right? Like, how do we create shining stars out of all of these challenges in our lives? How do we turn those around and bring those things back to the surface? So if you can align your habits with the identity you want for yourself tomorrow, this will happen. So here are the 8 takeaways from the presentation I want you to remember. First, remember you are the one that has the ability to take control of your habits. Some people are going to be really frustrated at work. People are always on a spectrum when you're talking to 4,000 people. Some people are going to be very excited and engaged at work. Others, not so much, right? Looking for another job. But you do have the ability on a daily basis to control your attitude and the habits that you're going to address, and at least make recommendations for changes. And if at some point those changes aren't able to be implemented or people won't implement them for you, you can make a decision and go pursue a different job internally or even externally or whatever the scenario is. But think about how you can implement those habits. Try conducting the habit inventory. Use that spreadsheet. It's a wonderful tool. It's very insightful and usually helps you set priorities that people have been kicking around for a long time but just haven't taken action on. And once you've identified the habit you want to eliminate or change or add, it'll be much easier to finish building out your new habit technique and the approach that you want to use. So at that point, you're down to step 4. You're going to say, okay, let's manage these habits. Number 5, effectively managing habits will influence your short and long-term goals. So create a strategy. So figure out what it is you want. Where do you want to go? Put a flag in the sand and start marching towards it, right? If you're in a boat, you're going towards that buoy. Figure it out. But if you've got to have a target to know where you're going. And then track your progress. That's why that habit tracker is so valuable, because then you can tell yourself daily, are you making progress? Are you actually doing the things that you said you would do? And if not, figure out why not, change the cue, the reward, and start doing them. So the tracker can be really key for a lot of folks. And then pivot. So again, if the response and the reward aren't working for you, figure out what the cue is so you can get a different response. Maybe change the reward. Maybe at the end of every week that you don't drink a Diet Coke, you go out for a salad at your favorite restaurant. Now you've just doubled your benefit. You didn't drink the Diet Coke, and now you've got this amazing salad habit that you're eating every Friday at the end of the week. So figure out what that looks like for you, but don't be afraid to change it, right? So change the response and reward if it's not working. So pick and use one technique to use at work and at home. Use it and enjoy the results. Depending on what they are, our habits will either make us or break us. We become what we repeatedly do. This is from Sean Covey, son of Stephen Covey, author of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Interestingly, we are what we repeatedly do. Success is not action, but a habit. Written by Aristotle, who died in 322 BC. So you see, the people who study habits and techniques for success and sustained success and personal growth continue to come back to the same themes. And some of the best thinkers, and I looked at lots of different quotes and lots of different authors, always come back to this essential technique, if you will. Our habits are what make us. Our habits are what we repeatedly do. So if you want to be successful, if you want to be a great athlete, if you want to be a great project manager, figure out what those habits are that are going to take you to that next level and do them repeatedly. Pivot, change your cue, change your response and your reward, and you'll see your performance continue to go up. Thank you to all the participants at the PMI Mile High Symposium. Thank you, participants. I hope you took away a few nuggets today. I really appreciate your time. Have a wonderful afternoon.